Recording is in progress. All right, thank you all. So hello, I am Sam Valentine. I am the new director of Archives and Outreach at the History Project, Boston's LGBTQ+ community archives. It is our mission to document, preserve, and share the LGBTQIA+ history of Boston and of New England. As part of that work, we partner with organizations and individuals to host our Out of the Archives event series to share stories and help folks connect with our community's living history. Tonight, we're pleased to welcome you to a talk with Mev Miller, who I'll introduce briefly. Mev Miller was an active participant in the Women in Print movement in the 1980s to 2002 as a bookseller, editor, writer, reviewer, and promoter. As a result, she's accrued an extensive library of lesbian feminist publications, nearly 3,000 volumes and counting. Additionally, she has hundreds of music recordings, videos, and other lesbian memorabilia and artifacts. As the Lesbrarian Instigator, love those words, creating Wanderground, her collection will be the cornerstone for a growing archive of lesbian materials from individuals and organizations. Mev has also participated as an activist in several lesbian communities and is currently involved with OLOC, Older Lesbians Organizing for Change. Mev will be giving us an introduction to Wanderground, Rhode Island's new lesbian archives / library. And I'll turn it over to you, Mev. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Sam. And it's really nice to see a lot of familiar faces of folks I already know, or people I haven't seen for a long time either. So that's a great amount of fun. And I don't know, she already told you a lot of stuff that's already in the presentation, but I will go ahead anyway. And my original goal is to just talk a little bit about Wanderground and what we're trying to accomplish, where we've been, where we're going, what's happening now, how you can get involved. And then I'm mostly going to open it up to questions and answers because I find that much more interesting to respond to whatever questions you have. So basically the large vision of Wanderground, if you can imagine a place that is open and airy and bright and has a lot of volumes of books and art and music and a flexible space with tables that can move around and chairs for small groups to gather or large groups to gather. But this is our vision for Wanderground, a place where lesbians and anyone interested in lesbian history can gather and enjoy and explore. So this space will have a lot of things happening in it. Hopefully, that's the goal. Our vision is to have this vibrant community gathering space to collect, preserve, and bring to life lesbian activisms, artistic cultural expressions, and forgotten legacies. We're very much founded on feminist, womanist, social equity principles. It's a place where folks can explore different political points of view or criticisms and hopefully come to some sense of transformative power where folks can wander and browse, affirm their own lesbian identities or discover their lesbian identities, revitalize our histories, and build bridges for generations of lesbian futures, and ultimately to reclaim lesbian visibility, voice, histories, and creativities of lesbians as lesbians. I like to say the word lesbian. I say it a lot. I'm a lesbian. How about you? The inspiration for Wanderground comes from other lesbian archives that exist around the country. The Lesbian History Archives in New York. Some of you may have visited there. I never have. I'd love to go, but I visited their website and it's pretty awesome. The Mazer Collection, which is in West Hollywood, California. Black Lesbian Archives, which the last I heard was they had a bus that's traveling around showing different memorabilia and histories of African-American lesbians. BELA is the Bay Area Lesbian Archives, which pretty much focuses on Oakland and San Francisco and communities in the Bay Area. And then Purple is an umbrella organization based in Michigan State University. They have a lot of music. They have a lot of the Michigan Festival and Goldenrod music distribution. So these are some of the inspirations for creating Wanderground, and look to them for ideas on leadership. Recently, as Sam mentioned, I've been part of the Women in Print movement between 1980 to about 2002. I've worked in distribution and bookstores and printing and promotion and publishing and all different, and librarianship even, all different angles. And as a result, I have amassed about 40 years worth of lesbian everything, books, periodicals, all kinds of things. And so part of the inspiration for this is that I want to share that collection. I want to make it available to the community. I enjoy having it in my home, but it's pretty rich, and so I'd like to share it. In 2021-22, I've been having this idea of doing some kind of a lesbian archive space for many, many years. Actually, even as far back as when I lived in the New Haven area back in the 1980s. So I've had this idea for a long time, but when I moved here to Rhode Island and finally decided now's the time to actually do something with this, I did a mini research grant through the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities. And the idea was, the question I had was, is anybody interested in this? Like, should I even bother to put the effort into creating a lesbian archive in Rhode Island? And because it's the Rhode Island Council for the Humanities, they very much want you to focus on Rhode Island communities and history. And so my other question was, since I didn't live here during the heyday of a lot of the lesbian activism and publishing that was going on, I wanted to know what was actually here in Rhode Island. So through this research, I did find a lot of information about Rhode Island lesbian communities, and basically was encouraged that, yes, there is definitely some interest for this in this area. Of course, in the back of my mind, even though I've been starting it in Rhode Island or thinking about Rhode Island, my idea is really to make it a larger New England regional archive library. Since doing that research, I've had the opportunity to speak to community groups like this. We've done a Rhode Island authors reading. I've spoken to a couple of different writers clubs, and so on. So this work, we're growing, and we're gaining a lot of interest from lesbians, both in New England, but also around the country, actually. I noticed that many folks here who are in this Zoom are not even from New England, which is great. And I don't see it as only holding New England lesbian materials, but also because my collection does have a lot of objects from around nationally and international, it will be a broader collection. I'm currently working on a grant from the Ellen Lyman Cabot Fund, which is giving me the opportunity to catalog and preserve all the publications and artifacts that I have using archival boxes and things like that. Also then to create some storytelling and artistic expressions using these objects to tell my own lesbian life, my own memoir. And then also to ultimately provide some of these materials digitally through various resources, presentations, the website, and other public events. I'm going the wrong way. Go forward, Mev, not backwards. So basically where we are right now is that we are a startup organization with no location. Like I said, everything is in my house. But we do have an active Amazon Steward Council. We just received nonprofit status this past fall in 2022, which allows us to start getting grants and take donations. And right now we are just starting this month a strategic planning process. We're working with a consultant to help us to work on strategies to help raise the funds so that we can actually find a space, a building where we can put these objects so that they can be enjoyed by the larger community. We're searching for a suitable and accessible physical space, probably in Rhode Island, because I want to be close to it. I want to have access to it. And then we are also in the process of creating guidelines for what kinds of materials we want to receive. And we do expect that we will be expanding the collection of materials from lesbians, from whoever wants to donate them to us. And I do want to say that we do see this as a community space, one in which is open and accessible to anybody who wants to come and see what we have. We do have a website that is up right now. I'm in the process of redoing it, but the reason I'm showing you this particular page is if you go to our website and you click on that tab that says collections, you can go down to another button that says click here to see the current library. I've been cataloging the books that I own. And so everything that is in this particular page is stuff that actually is in the collection. And I know that there are some 3,000 volumes that I've already cataloged. The reason I say and growing is because I haven't cataloged everything yet. I probably still have another third of the materials to go through to add to this growing list. So it is, like I said, it is a starter collection of materials that I've been collecting over the last 4 years. I especially am highlighting lesbian and feminist presses and music labels between 1970 and 2000. I have a lot of those in the collection, which are, some of them are quite rare and hard to find, and unique one-off items. Like, for example, I'm thinking of Alison Bechtel did a little ABC book that is probably 3 or 4 inches big, it's square, but she only did 100 copies of them. So I have one of them. So I'm very excited about, so those kinds of things that are hard to find and see and that you wouldn't see anywhere else. Letters, photos, articles, journals, clippings, postcards. I have all kinds of stuff. And I will show you some samples of that as I move forward. And then, like I mentioned, a lot of materials, mostly national and some international, but also regional and so on. So back in last year, in June to August, the Providence Public Library has been very supportive of Wanderground and our work, and they provided me the opportunity to put together 7 cases of exhibit in the library that stayed there for 3 months. It started in June and went through August. I put together a curator's guide, which I still have copies of. If you're interested, I could mail you a hard copy, or if you want an electronic copy, I could send you that, but it also gives you some ideas, some of the materials that we have in the collection. But the exhibit was a slice of what we have. And so it represented the birthing days of the lesbian feminist publishing movement. Most items dating from like 1960 to 2000. And when I did the survey, the original research, this quote really stood out for me. What an exciting time that was, being part of a nationwide and worldwide lesbian feminist culture, being politicized, falling in love, concerts, conferences, women's centers, poetry, newspapers, journals, books, activism, working it out together. These personal politics became such a large part of my identity. I think probably my primary identity. And one of the things that I know happened during that exhibit was many of the lesbians who saw it definitely were taking a walk down memory lane, or were being introduced to things that they had never seen before. And so it was pretty exciting to watch everyone else being so excited by what they were seeing. So just a sampling of some of the things that are in the collection, just to give you some idea. The items here that are asterisk, common lives, gossip, and so on, those are things that I have full sets of these items. I have nearly a full set of Maze, and I'm hoping to get a full set of Rain and Thunder. The latter, some of you might know, was from the Daughters of Bilitis back in the 1960s. It's a really old publication from the 50s and 60s. I have a few issues of that, not nearly as many as there could be, or many that exist, but I do have some of them. So there are some interesting tidbits in here. In the picture, you'll also see the separatist newsletter that came out for about 3 or 4 years. So there's a lot. Some of these publications are regional. For example, A Lesbian Position was the newsletter that was in New Haven, Connecticut for many years. I have nearly a full set of that. So some of these publications are regional, like the Hag Rag, which I believe was Wisconsin focused, and others that are national. Okay, what's going on? Why are you not? There we go. I also have collections of early lesbian feminist publishers, like I mentioned before. Some of these, I don't know if many of you know the history of feminist publishing necessarily, lesbian publishing, but part of it started because printers wouldn't print our books. Publishers weren't publishing lesbian books. And then if a lesbian did have a book that she wanted to get published, printers wouldn't print them. So several of these organizations, Diana Press, Iowa City Women's Press, New Victoria Women's Press Collective, they actually all started out as printers, printing a lot of the publications that you saw in the previous slide. They were printing these materials because printers wouldn't do it. And then eventually they grew into full publishing houses and would publish materials for several years. So we have a pretty good collection of these types of books in the library collection. Also, there's a section that I call fun and games, cartoons and coloring books and games. There's a game that's called Dyke, Do You Know Enough? Sort of fashioned on Trivial Pursuit, humorous puzzle books and so on. And in the picture, you'll see the hothead paisan back in the center of that picture, and it's sitting in a box that kind of like a cigar box, but Diana Massa, who is the creator and publisher of Hothead Paisan, had for a while was selling candy bars, and she would send them out to the stores in these boxes. So that actually originally held chocolate bars. I think this particular box was the Rice Krispie box. Then, because it was a Rhode Island, because a lot of what I had done was based on Rhode Island work, I did put together a collection of materials, publications specifically from Rhode Island, published books that have been written by authors who are living in Rhode Island, and then other materials from lesbian organizations. But regionally, that collection is growing, and I'm looking forward to receiving more that we could put into Wanderground. The Rhode Island Women's Association and OLE, which is Old Lesbian Energy, those are actually from the Boston and Southern Mass area. Rhode Island Women's, obviously Rhode Island, both lesbian organizations. I have some of their organizational papers and photo albums, which are kind of fun to look at. Dykes camping and hiking and having parties and Halloween parties and so on. That's pretty interesting to look at those volumes. The Third Wave was a feminist publication in Rhode Island, but mostly run by lesbians. And what I did discover in Rhode Island was that folks didn't say lesbian so much. They called themselves feminists, but it was all run by lesbians. So it was sort of like somebody said to me one time, feminist was a euphemism for lesbian in Rhode Island. The Rhode Island Alliance for Lesbian and Gay Civil Rights, I have some of their brochures. They were started back in 1984. I mentioned the newsletter Lesbian Position. I have a few items from the New England Women's Music Retreat. I don't know if any of you remember those from back in the 80s. And then there's other artifacts. Some of this is my own stuff from the Spinsters Opposed to Nuclear Genocide and other organizations in the area. So this collection is growing over time, I'm hoping, as folks send things to me. I was a DJ in Minneapolis for 10 years. I did a lesbian radio show called the Lesbian Power Authority. So my collection also includes a large amount of albums, music albums, and CDs. There were also the periodicals, Paid My Dues and Hotwire. And then some of the New England-based musicians that are in the collection. Linda Shear, some of you may remember her. I think she was from the Northampton area back in the day. Moon Circles by Kate Gardner. Kate Gardner was up from up in Maine, near Lake Idaho. And Maxine, who spent a lot of time in Provincetown, Maxine Feldman. And then other things in the collection include songbooks from various lesbian musicians, books about women's music history, and then we do have some videos, movies, and documentaries. You can see in the picture, there's one that's called Eating Fire, which was the Lesbian Avengers. They have a video as well as a book. There's some other cool things in there, but I can't see through the glass. I'm sorry, this was from the exhibit at the library, and it's not a very good picture. The other things that we have are a lot of buttons and bumper stickers and mugs. And if you'll look at the picture that's on the left there, the nail clip, I don't know if any of you remember a lesbian movie that was called Go Fish. one of their there's a scene in the movie where they're clipping each other's fingernails. But anyway, as a promotional item, the folks who did the video put together these nail clippers that on them say "Go Fish" as a promotional item. I don't know if Kathy Lewis made it this evening. She was hoping to come, but there's a hat in that exhibit that's knitted Labrador's hat that she made, a wool cap that she knitted at one point. And then other items, mugs and bumper stickers and photo books and tarot cards and all kinds of fun things in the collection. So that's a taste of what Wanderground is, who we are, where we're going, what we're hoping to do. You can join our mailing list. If you go to the website, you can click on the button that says join our mailing list, and you'll get, we don't send a whole lot of stuff, maybe a newsletter once a month and notices of various events that we're doing. So feel free to do that, or you could just write if you have questions or things you want to let us know about. I strongly encourage you to organize your lesbian materials for future donation. So like I said, everything is in my house right now. So I know you would love to give me your stuff and I would really love to receive it from you. But right now at this moment, I have no place to put it. So please save it, put it in a box, put a thing on the top that says this goes to Wanderground so that your loved ones know where to put it. You don't even have to organize it that much. The only thing that you might want to do is if you have photos, you might want to identify where it was, what year it was, who's in the photo, if you remember. Like I have photos and I'm like, I have no idea who this is anymore. But you know, so just any of those kind of materials. I say to lesbians all the time, your life matters, our lives matter. And it doesn't matter if you're not what you consider a famous lesbian. It doesn't matter. We are building a sense of who is in our communities, what we were doing. So regardless of whether you're a non-reader and you're a softball player, or you're a bar dyke, or you're a mechanic, or a doctor, or whatever your professional life is, or if you're a gardener or a knitter or a yoga instructor or whatever it is that you do, all of that is important because that's who is in our communities. And so we're trying to gather as much, you know, to show that our lives matter, that we were here, that we did really cool stuff with our lives, even if it's just partying. I just came from a Zoom where we were looking at lesbian home movies, and they were a lot of fun. And that stuff is really inspiring. So I encourage you to save it for future donation and mark it that you want it to go to Wanderground. The other way you can do is, one of the things that we are doing is we're trying to play with the language a little bit. So instead of a board of directors, we are called the Amazon Steward Council. We see ourselves as stewards of this organization rather than board of directors. So we're playing with the language a little bit. So a wanderer would be anybody who comes or wants to participate in Wanderground, just to come and look and see or view the website. So anybody who does that in our mind is a wanderer. A groundkeeper is someone who actually volunteers her skills, her time, her energy to helping Wanderground go. Once we find a space and we need some volunteers now too, to help promote what we're doing or talk about us, or in a positive way, I hope, or to like maybe help us do some writing and research and those kinds of things. So there's a lot going on that we're working on. Like I said, the council is right now working on some strategic planning. So we're hoping to have some real clear direction in the next month or two that we can then share with others as well. The other thing too is that I don't have it here, but I did want to mention that we're doing, because Wanderground doesn't have a space, we are trying to do some pop-up events through the spring of 2023. So we hopefully will get into Connecticut at some point in March or April, I believe, and Western Mass, maybe up to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Portland, Maine, and maybe up into Burlington, Vermont. That's sort of plan right now. And maybe someplace further down in like Newport, Rhode Island, someplace like that. So, and I just got word from the Providence Public Library, they want to do something with us. So this is still very sketchy, but we'll probably be doing something with the Providence Public Library again in March, where we'll be showing some materials and they'll use them as inspiration for folks who want to make things in the makerspace at the Providence Public Library. So there's a lot happening that we're working on, and that's it for me. I would really like to hear your questions or your comments and just kind of open it up for discussion. If you want to, you can, I see there's a lot of chats going on and I can't read them and talk at the same time. So hopefully Sam's been looking at them and will give me some heads up about that. But otherwise you can just raise your electronic hand. If you go down to reactions and raise your hand, then it makes it a little easier for me to see you. But if you go like this, I might be able to see you. Sally.
Well, I sort of wanted to emphasize the importance of what you're doing. At the current rate of erasure of women and lesbians, I really want everybody, especially if you live in an area where there's a university or a college, check with them. They really might want your information, whatever you've been doing for the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years. It's very important that we all honor our own history and get it out there. What you're doing, Mev, is fabulous, 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 but you don't have to have 3,000 pieces to contact your local university or college or whatever. Get your history out there, because if we don't, it will disappear. How long did it take us to even find out in the 70s, to even find out there were women and lesbians who were fighting, male domination? We didn't know, we never learned. So I'm just encouraging everybody, and thank you, Mev.
You're welcome, Sally. Deborah?
Yeah, I find this great. And I clicked on your link right away and everything's listed out there, but I can't click on it and read through it. Is it going to go digital at some time?
You mean the collection?
Huh?
You should be able to. If you want to private message me your email in the chat, I can check that out. But yeah, if you click on that and then once you're in there, you should be able to click on any book and it should open up and tell you the author and the publisher and something about it. That's the whole point of that list. It's an interactive thing. So you should be able to.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sam, were there questions in the chat?
People have been kind of answering each other's questions in the chat, and one of them was sort of answered, but I did want to pose it to you as well for any of your input, which is what other freestanding regional lesbian archives are you aware of? And that came up as you were kind of preparing to embark on this project yourself. Yeah,
so there are most of the archives in the New England area that I'm aware of are university-based. The only exception to that is that I'm aware of is the Providence Public Library has a special collection that they're calling the LGBTQ collection. And it is very specific. It is focused only on Rhode Island. That's the only thing they collect, organizations and individuals and people in Rhode Island. There is the Sophia Smith collection, which is part of Western Mass, and I want to say Smith College, maybe. I'm having a brain cramp at the moment. But anyway, so they're a huge collection out in Western Mass, university-based. Brown University has the Hay Library with special collections. That is LGBTQ. They have special collections. They also have some pulp novels and zines and a bunch of other stuff. And again, university based. for researchers. And then there's the Schlesinger Library up in the Boston area. And then there are small things like, believe it or not, the Central Connecticut College has a collection of papers by Christine Patti, which are, I think her stuff from the New England Women's Music Festival and some other things. And she had a pulp novel collection, but that's in Central Connecticut someplace. So the thing is that there are lesbians all over the place, in here and there and everywhere, and it's kind of hard to find them. I think the biggest collection that's feminist and lesbian focused in this region is probably the one at Sophia Smith. But you know, archives that are truly archives like to put, mostly for safety's sake, they have things behind walls. And so you have to go to the desk and say, I would like to see, and you write it down, and they, you know, and they go in the back and bring it out. And so the community archives, Lesbian History Archives and Mazer and some, try to make their materials a little bit more touchable and accessible, so that you can walk into the space and you can see, oh, here's this shelf and I want to go over there and look at that. And they still have folks there who can help you find stuff. Oh, and then of course the History Project, duh, doink. Sam can talk about that up in Boston. So those are the ones that I'm aware of, that I'm most familiar of. And, you know, and I think Sally's point is, and well taken, that wherever you want to put, you know, a lot of some lesbians have their things in more than one place, you know, but, you know, and there's in the South, there's the Southern Feminist Lesbian Archives, and they focus on the South, lesbians from the South. So different archives will have different focuses, different purposes. So for me, my start is what I have and what I need to move along for others to enjoy. And so that's sort of the cornerstone, but it can definitely over time become whatever it becomes, depending on who takes it over after and you know, part of the inspiration for me is I'm in my late 60s. I don't have a whole lot of years left. And so I have to do it now while I still physically can manage it. And that's also one of my goals. Redsy, hi. Oh, you're muted, sweetie. You're still muted. You're still muted.
Sorry, I'm out of practice here. I'm out of practice. Okay, I have so much material, but can you give us, or maybe send me information? How do I organize it? Put it in folders? That's what I have it in now. We just moved, so I just took everything and put it in like folders in a box. But the folders mean nothing. So that's my hardest thing. I did Hera Productions, which is a production company. I have stuff for that. I went to festivals. I have some of Alex's stuff still. How do I organize it all? That's my biggest problem.
So it's interesting. We just had a meeting of lesbian archives. There's a bunch of lesbian archives that we've been meeting. We've started to talk to each other. And one of the archivists, and actually this is another archivist I was talking to the other day. She said, you know what? Don't put people through a lot of stress. Like, archivists love to go in a box and figure it out. Our job is to organize it. So if you have it in a box, leave it in the box and just leave it alone and give it to us and we'll take care of it. If you want to be helpful and put things maybe in folders by years or like projects. So if you say all of this stuff is from this production company I did, all of this stuff is from all the festivals I went to, that could be useful. If you help us figure out, like, maybe put a piece of paper on top of it that says these are from the dates from 1979 to 1984, you know, something like that, that would be helpful. If you label the folders, whatever's in it, you don't have to say this is a letter from my Aunt Sally, this is a note from my friend. You don't have to do all that level of work. If you have a bunch of letters, just stick them, you know, if you want to say this is a packet of letters from my first lover, you know, I mean, that might be useful, but, you know, mostly the point of an archive is to maintain the history. And so let the researchers figure out why, the context and all of that. I mean, we're just making the stuff available for others to explore and do the research, whatever that means to them, whatever they're looking for. So I would say, even if it's a little mildewy and stuff, keep it away from other stuff so it doesn't get infected. It doesn't infect the other stuff, but yeah, isolate it, keep it in isolation. But, you don't have to get too crazy with all of that. Just put it in a box and label it and let us explore what's in there. Anything but like I said, like with photos, if you could give us like place or names or dates, or if we have a little bit of context, that definitely helps. And whatever you can remember, because I'm looking at my own stuff and I'm like, I have no idea. I don't even remember doing this. Never mind why I still have it. So,
Yeah. Okay, well, that really helps. Thanks, Mev. The other thing is, what about the Lesbian History Archives in New York City? I mean, that's one that people send to also, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They take stuff all the time. Actually, the other day, somebody said, we take anything that a lesbian touched. I'm like, I don't think I want to go that far. I'm not sure we're going to go that far, but. I think especially if it's something really unique, handmade, a poster or a zine, that maybe somebody made 20 copies of, or, those kinds of things are also very interesting because they're rare and unique, and, you're not going to see them anywhere else. So. Other questions? Sam, is there anything else in the chat?
I think the chat is pretty good. We've had people answering some other people's questions and some people dropping links to other resources. So if you're looking for links to learn more about what other lesbian archives are out there, there's a really useful link that Rose put in there. I had a question for you, Mev, which is, what is one of your personal favorite items, a singular item from your collection?
Oh my God, that's like asking me my favorite child. Well, that is really a hard question. I was not expecting that one. I have to think about that. Actually, I've been ruminating a lot about, I just went through the button collection and reorganized all the buttons that I have. And several of the buttons were handmade by an organization that I was part of that was called the Spinsters Opposed to Nuclear Genocide. And we were based in New Haven, a bunch of dykes doing all kinds of protests and mostly anti-oppression work of various kinds, anti-nuclear work, anti-racism, anti-sexism. We just did a lot of stuff. And one of the little remembrances that I have was that there was a group in Hartford that were called Dykes Against Nuclear Crimes Everywhere. So Spinsters Opposed to Nuclear Genocide is song. Dykes Against Nuclear Crimes Everywhere is dance. And so sometimes we would do stuff together as song and dance. So that was, but one of the things that I then went through was a folder that has all my Spinsters stuff in it. So it's filled with articles that we wrote and protest signs that we had, and all my tickets from all the times I got arrested are in there. I'm like, wow, I still have these like summons to go to court to do whatever. So that I think that for me, the fun of going through my own personal stuff is walking down memory lane and remembering some of the crazy, weird things that I did in my youth that I guess I'm still doing a little bit in my old age, but not quite as daring as I was when we were reappropriating billboards in New Haven and putting anti-nuclear, or the woman kicking the bomb. We went one time and took over this whole billboard, and just repainted it because it was empty. It needed something on it, so we just did it. So things like that I remember. And a poster that declares a curfew against all men ages 16 and over after the hours of 8 o'clock in the evening, that there was a curfew that men couldn't be out between 8 p.m. and 6 o'clock the next morning. And we posted those all over New Haven. But the fun thing about that one is that I have since seen, that must have been something that other communities did, because I have seen at least 1 or 2 other posters with practically the same language that folks did in their communities as well. So that's a fun thing too, I like. Oh, and I found a piece of, I don't know if anybody remembers Greenham Common, the peace encampments at Greenham Common. Somebody brought me back a piece of fence that they had cut through the fence to go through to get into the depot, the Army depot. And so somebody gave me a little piece of the fence. So I still have a Greenham Common piece of fence, which I think is pretty cool. Ollie, is that how you say it? Ollie or Allie?
It's Allie. So I would like to see everything that older lesbians donate. And I know about, 24 other women in their 20s who feel the same. So I want to kind of reiterate what's been said, is if there are women on the Zoom who feel like there's something that is not significant for them to contribute, please do. If you have even the slightest thought of contributing it, please think about it. Because this history is all we have. I know I want to see it. I want to learn from that wisdom. And I know, again, at least 24 other women, and I'm sure there's many, many more, who are lesbians who are in their 20s or in their early 30s who feel, exactly the same way. And I talk to them about it regularly. So yeah, just that. And thanks to you guys for doing what you're doing.
Thanks. And you also, when I was doing that research back in 21, 22, I actually had the opportunity to talk to a couple of young 20-something lesbians here in Rhode Island who very much said that same thing. And actually expressed a little bit of anger that all the things that we had in the olden days, bookstores and festivals and concerts and all of those things that created that kind of community. One gal in particular, she was really kind of pissed off that it doesn't exist anymore, kind of jealous, and really wanted. And so hopefully in Wanderground, because I worked in feminist bookstores for a long time, that's kind of the atmosphere to try to capture some of that. We can't remake it, obviously. It's going to be different. It's going to be new. It's going to be different people, different experiences, but to somehow create that kind of welcoming space where, young and old and any intergenerational, any age can come in and find something meaningful to them that they can hold on to and either learn from or remember or add to. Because I think it's a mistake to say that there isn't a lesbian culture now, because there is. It's just different. And some of us recognize it differently than other people. And so I think that it's important for young lesbians to pay attention to what they're doing and understand that what they're making is also a lesbian culture too. Different than what we did, because the context and the times are different and the stresses are different, but still very viable and very important to hold on to that as well. So if you're 20-something, hold on to your stuff too for 40 years like I did, because there will be folks 40 years down the line who are going to want to know what was happening in 2020 and 2023 and so on. I'm going to skip you, Sally, for a minute and go to Jenny, okay?
Hey there. I just sent you a whole package of things, and I live in Western North Carolina, and I just want to know how many things you accept from outside New England. You seem to be very focused on New England lesbian culture.
Yeah, no, I'm interested in all of it. Anything anybody wants to send me. So I'm just saying New England because this is where we are, and but certainly interested in anything from everywhere. Yeah, and part of the reason I'm interested in Jenny's stuff is because some of it's from Baltimore, and I grew up in Baltimore, and so part of it is because I'm just really fascinated. This is where I get to learn, because Jenny has stuff from the 70s when I was in college, and we discovered, she wrote her memoir, and I discovered that she was talking about things that was happening in the neighborhood where I went to college that I had no idea about because I was not out yet. I didn't know anything about lesbians. I had not a clue. And it's so fascinating for me to read stuff from what she was doing in Baltimore in the 70s around the corner from where I knew not what's going on. So it's just a lot of fun for me to become aware of that. So but the answer is, even though we're saying we're based in New England, we're trying to get we'll take anything from anywhere. And I got to find a way to say that. So thank you for that challenge, Jenny. I'll work.
I love that you call it Balmer.
Hey, when you grow up, that's the way you say it. Balmer.
The way those homegirls say it.
Some people say Baltimore, which is how it's spelled.
We say Balmer.
Balmer.
And another thing, I just wanted to be clear, once you are not with us, how have you ensured that this will continue? Because I really understand that the university archives are less accessible, and I want to contribute to one that's more accessible, but how will it continue?
Well, and hopefully the council will get that cleared, and then we will, figure out how to do, that's called succession planning. So we will be doing that. Contingency and succession planning. There's a lot of things we have to focus on. But it does say in our bylaws as a nonprofit organization that if for some reason Wanderground no longer exists, that the materials in the archive go to another lesbian archive who will accept the materials. So they won't get lost. That's, trying to make those arrangements with whoever, even if it ends up being a university library, that the groundkeepers at that time, the stewards at that time, will make sure that they get to where they can be kept. So they won't. I mean, part of my fear is that if something were to happen to me tomorrow, nobody would know why this stuff is here, and it might end up in a dumpster. And that's what I don't want to have happen. So that's the imperative, is like, how do we make sure that this stays alive and vibrant and doesn't end up in the dump?
Mhm.
So
Thank you.
thank you, Jenny. Denise? She's still looking for her unmute button. I wish they would let us on this side unmute people, because they don't let us. And so otherwise I would do it for you, but go ahead. No, you're still muted. There you go.
There we go. Thank you for your patience. At first, I want to thank you for, as the tech person, from what I hear, for OLAC. So you do yeoman's work. So, and I attended with Sue Reamer and another person, and we went out to lunch. We went to, you showed us around.
Yeah, I remember now.
Yep.
You look different on Zoom.
I have my Zoom glasses on. I was curious, at the end of the Providence, Rhode Island gig, did you have, a couple of really great experiences that, like somebody came in and they were just overwhelmed with joy? And was there the opposite end of the spectrum? Did you get picketed, and et cetera, et cetera?
We did not get picketed, but we did have an evaluation box, and so some people took the evaluation forms and wrote nasty business, because that's what they like to do. One of the best things that happened is that Sally Tatnall, who was over there with her hand raised very patiently, actually drove all the way from Cleveland, Ohio to Providence, Rhode Island, just so that she could see it. And that to me is just overwhelmingly amazing. So I think overall the reactions were very positive. The one thing that I did learn from that experience, and that which is part of the reason for the pop-ups, is people were very frustrated because it was in the library and it was all under glass and it was locked up. and people couldn't touch it. They couldn't open it. They couldn't see what was in it and that kind of thing. And so I think that was a source of frustration for some people. So having an opportunity for people that just encouraged me to say people really want to look at this stuff. They really want to thumb through it and kind of get a sense of what it is. And so trying to think about how to do these pop-ups in a way so that the materials are safe but also available is something that I'm working on, so that people can really get a better sense of what we have and what's there. So I think overall it was the Providence Public Library has been enormously supportive. They've been very helpful to me because I'm not a trained archivist. I'm not even a trained librarian. I just know books and stuff because I've been doing it for 40 years. But very transferable skills, if you will. And I know I've learned a lot just from talking to other archivists from other lesbian archives. I've learned a lot how to take care of things, but they've also been helpful in helping me curate the collection and present it. And they've been very supportive in giving me like ideas of how to save things and whatnot. So they've been very helpful. So the whole experience was just more positive than negative. Hard to know how many people actually went, but I probably got maybe 40 or 50 evaluation forms that by and large were popular. So, I thought that was pretty great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sally, thank you for waiting. Unmute yourself, sweetie.
Will you be doing sort of a little history on lesbian print and publishing? I did not know that the printing came because no one would print our stuff, which of course makes total sense, but I just didn't know it. So if you could give, I don't know, just write what you know, that would be great.
Yeah, actually there's Beth Dingman, who was the publisher of New Victoria Publications Press. She's been working on a history. And I have some papers from her that she's given to Wanderground. And she's actually written a couple of articles for Rain and Thunder about feminist lesbian publishing. And so some of that history is a little bit in the curator's guide that I did, but also trying to piece together various stories from the different feminist presses. I don't know a whole lot of them. I'm actually going through my own files and finding. I just remember my first start in part of my start in this business was actually working for a wholesaler in East Haven, Connecticut called Inland Book Company. And they were wholesalers of small and independent press, feminist, leftist, marginalized publications from all these little presses from all over the country. And I had the best job in the world. My job was to take the book orders from the feminist and lesbian and independent and gay and alternative booksellers from all over the country. So I spent all day on the phone talking to New Words Books in Cambridge and 31st Street Bookstore and Audra's Bookstore, which the name of escapes me at the moment. But I got to talk to all these feminist and lesbian booksellers all over the country. It was so much fun, and they'd say, "What's new?" And I'd look at my table. I had a table next to me, and it had all the new Naiad, all the new Spinsters, all the new Allison publications, all the new lesbian and gay books available. And I'd say, "Oh, you want to know about this one, this one, this one, and this one." And so I'd get to talk about the books with these feminist booksellers. It was so much fun. And that's why I have all this stuff. But that's also why I know about all these presses, Daughters and Diana and Persephone, and presses that only lasted maybe 5, 6, 10 years at the most. Firebrand Books, Naiad, I said already, Aunt Loot Books, Kitchen Table Women of Color Press, Redbone Press.
Seal.
Seal, thank you, Seal. Did I say Spinsters Inc. already? So anyway, so there's a bunch of them, out and out books, and then little ones that you'd like, people would do like one book. And so I'd have that one book. So anyway, yeah, I'll work on that, Sally. I'll add that to my to-do list. And I'm hoping some of that information will go up on the Wanderground website, that as we get organized and stuff, that some of the information, like this week will feature this press and these are the books from that press and that kind of thing. So that's sort of definitely a long-term project. And now I've said it out loud, so don't hold my feet to the fire just yet. Any other questions or thoughts?
We do have a question from the chat from Audrey, who logged on late and it's a little bit, and they ask, can you tell me more about the curator's guide to Wanderground?
Yeah, so the curator's guide was something that I put together for the display exhibit at the Providence Public Library. And so basically what I did was I had 7 cases at the library, and so outlined what was in each of those 7 cases in detail. So the case that had the lesbian periodicals in it, I listed the periodicals that were in the case and like a little bit about when they were published, what years they were active, if I had a full set of them or not, that kind of thing. And for the case that had the publishers, the books in it, these were the publishers, these were the years they published, some of the listing of what was in the case. So that's pretty much what's in the curator's guide, is just to give you a taste of some of what we actually have in the collection. And like I said, I can send a copy of that to you electronically if you email it to me, or I still have some hard copies of it. I can put it in the mail if you're the sort of person that prefers paper. Anything else? I have no idea what time it is, so I'm looking at all your wonderful faces and I'm just so happy. First of all, thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it, that you're here and that you're interested and that you've stayed with me for this hour. And I really appreciate it very much. Thank you. Beatrice.
Hello. I just have a quick comment, which may be redundant, but are you familiar with Queer Archive?
Yes. I've not been over there yet, but I do want to get over there.
Well, I am a member, so you could coordinate, or anybody in this group could coordinate with me for access. I mean, they have public hours as well, and I would love to take copies of that curator guide and bring them. So
okay, yeah. Could you throw
put a note to Sam
in the chat, Somi, so I can get your email address?
Yep.
All right, great. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, we're reaching 8 o'clock already, which this hour has flown by. And I just want to reaffirm, thank you, Mev, for being here and for sharing all about Wanderground. Thank you all for joining us. And I just wanted to remind you, Mev, to give you an opportunity to plug at the end your pop-ups that you'll be doing.
Yeah, pop-ups. Hold on, I have it on my desk here. There we go. Pop-ups will be happening this spring, March, hopefully someplace in Newport, Rhode Island. April, hopefully in Connecticut, either at the Triangle Center in Norwalk or somewhere in New Haven, yet to be determined, maybe the Pride Center. May, hopefully Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Portland, Maine. Western Mass, hopefully sometime in late May or early May. And then June, possibly up to Burlington, Vermont. This is just, I have not talked to anybody yet. This is my sketch. This is my notes. So, but hopefully, don't have plans to come to Boston area, but I don't know. You never know. Things might change. We'll see how it goes. Anything else? Sounds good. And like I said, please join the mailing list. You can, when we get when we get more details about the pop-ups, we will be putting those in our newsletter. So make sure that you sign up and then you'll get to see more details of what's happening.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
This was great, Mev. Absolutely great.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time and showing up and your interest.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.